evening, everyone. Great to see you all out there over Zoom land. I'm Professor and Chair of Human-Centered Design Engineering, Julie Keens, and I'll be kind of our MC for tonight. And I'm really excited to have you all here for the book event for Professor Cecilia Aragon. So many of you, if you're from HCDE or an alum of the department, might know Cecilia the professor. She's a professor and director of the Human-Centered Data Science Lab here at HCDE at the University of Washington, and her research focuses on enabling humans to explore and gain insight from vast data sets. You might have seen her teaching classes such as information visualization, as well as human-centered data science. But you may not have known, unless you've read her book or learned more about her, is that she's also a local Seattle author. And she has written a memoir on called Flying Free. And the book is here if you'd like to see it. We also had it here in the beginning. Cecilia's got it as well. And it's on her victory over fear to become the first Latina pilot on the U.S. aerobatic team. And so we're going to spend about an hour today just talking with Cecilia about the book and what it meant to her, and try to make it relevant to those of you out there who are friends of the department. So just real briefly, do you want to say hello, Cecilia, and introduce yourself?
Hi, Julie, and thanks for that great introduction. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to answering some of the questions that people have already submitted. And if people want to post questions in the Q&A, we'll try to get to as many as we can. And so, yeah, the title of the talk is, how is getting an engineering degree like flying upside down? And I hope that I'll be able to answer that question for you today, because there are actually surprising parallels. And believe it or not, I give credit to my learning to fly aerobatics to the fact that I was able to successfully complete my PhD in computer science. So yeah, thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it. And I guess I'll hand it back to Julie, and then we'll start the question and answers after the video, right?
Yeah, great. Yeah, so just to get you started, and because we can't have a video about a pilot and flying without actually seeing some footage of this fly. And so I want to make sure you all saw just how incredible Cecilia was before we get into the Q&A. And I think that'll put a lot of her answers in context here. So the Today Show on NBC did a really great video. And so we're just going to play that video for you briefly here.
So I was afraid of just about everything. I was afraid of heights. Certainly I was afraid of flying. I was even afraid of getting in an elevator.
Cecilia Aragon overcame several phobias to become a solo pilot in the mid-'80s. And in the span of 6 years, the first Latina on the U.S. aerobatic team.
I was the last person that anybody would have predicted that I would learn to fly a small airplane.
Once a shy girl who excelled in math, Cecilia was raised in the Midwest by a Filipino mother and Chilean father, and went on to navigate the sky with high speed and precision. As a young girl, she says that she was bullied and that teachers dismissed her.
It made me think that maybe there was something wrong with me.
Self-doubt and fear of failure continued into her 20s, but a turning point came in 1985, 1 week into her job as a Silicon Valley software developer.
I was saying no to everything new, and I was just doing kind of the minimum I could to get by. And my friend, Carlos, one day, he said, "How would you like to go for a ride in a small plane?" I decided that it was time to face my fears, just this once. We took off, and it was so beautiful.
The moment convinced her to take lessons.
Before I learned to fly, I was often depressed and sad, but as soon as the wheels left the ground, I felt something inside me lift.
Soon after, she set her sights on aerobatics, but she had to overcome another challenge.
I'm only 5'2" and 100 pounds. My feet didn't reach the rudder pedals. So I had a set of special shoes made, kind of like platform shoes,
Cecilia has more than 60 contests under her belt. She even won a team bronze medal at the World Championships in 1994 before retiring from the sport.
Each day, I would make myself do something that was just a little scary. You know, the first day I didn't say, oh, I'm going to go fly loops and rolls. No, the first day I just said, I'm going to drive to the airport without throwing up.
Strategies she used in the air helped this computer scientist chase dreams in another field where Latina women are also underrepresented. Cecilia earned her PhD in 2004. Then in 2009, her work was honored with the Presidential Early Career Award for scientists and engineers.
I pointed my airplane straight at the ground at 250 miles an hour. If I can do that, I can apply for a job as a professor. So I did, and now I am a full professor at the University of Washington. It's the job I was born to do. I'm going to be talking about what I call human-centered data science. I believe really strongly that flying is what gave me freedom in life. I haven't stopped being afraid, but what I do know now is that whenever I am afraid, I turn to my inner strengths and I tell myself I can do this.
Incredible advice. She's an amazing person. And Cecilia has also left her mark on computer science. She says when people access a database, chances are they're using software that she wrote. And with all of her accomplishments in male-dominated fields, she's also living out her dream of following in her father's footsteps. He, too, was a professor. If you're interested in hearing more of her story, the book, again, is called Flying Free.
That's so good. We may not jump out of a plane or fly a plane, but we can push ourselves.
And there are things you're scared to do.
Right.
And you just have to find it inside you to get through it. Take that first step.
Yeah, it was very good.
Tonight, a grieving daughter is
Are we there? Okay, great.
Here you
Thank
go.
you. Sorry about that. Had to autoplay. So I'm gonna spend probably the next half hour or so just asking some general questions to Cecilia about the book, and then we'll open it up to the questions that some of you submitted when registering for this event, and then we'll move over to some of the questions from the Q&A. So for Cecilia, I love the video and I love the book, and it's been really great to get to know so much of your early life. So I just want to start out with asking you, why did you decide to write this book?
Well, I've actually been working on it for almost 20 years. But I think that especially, the reason why I really decided to push and get serious about writing it more recently is that I feel that especially today, there's a really important message for anyone who's dreamed of doing something, but who's stopped themselves because of fear or insecurity or lack of confidence or racism or sexism. So there's so many young people today who want to be scientists, but who allow themselves to be convinced, oh, I'm not good at math. I think people of color and young girls are often told either overtly or subliminally that they are not suited for a scientific or engineering career, that it's really challenging, it's really hard. Maybe you should do something that comes easily to you, something that you're more suited for. And I think this actually it transcends race and gender. I think anybody can allow those sort of niggling doubts or those voices of other people to get into their head, and they'll believe by the screwed up system can teach them that they're not good enough. I really want people to read this book and feel activated to change, and to change themselves and the world around them, because I think the world needs some major change right now.
Great, thank you. One of the things that struck me when I was reading this was in one of the chapters earlier in the book, you discussed this notion of how you recognize that you needed to retrain your intuition. So kind of building on a little bit what you were saying about these subliminal messages that many women and Latinas receive about sort of not being the right fit for engineering or not the right fit for flying or any of the other things that you've encountered. And so I've always been fascinated by this idea of intuition and this notion that you could potentially retrain that. So can you say a little bit more about the role that intuition played and how you were sort of able to retrain yourself and your intuition?
So yeah, I mean, because I was such a fearful person, my intuition was always telling me, oh, don't do that. It might be too dangerous. And, you know, there's all these personality quizzes. I would take all these personality quizzes as a kid. And you know what? All the choices that it said I was suited for were really boring, you know, but so I knew there was something kind of at odds there. So the problem is that it's really hard to go against what society is telling you to do. I mean, even if you're not aware of it, I mean, I could go on and on about this, but essentially we live in a society that tells us that women have to behave a certain way, you know, people of color have to behave a certain way. And if you go outside the box, you are slapped down, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, by other people in the world around you. And the worst part is when you do it to yourself. And that for me was the worst, because I can overcome, if other people tell me now as an adult, if other people tell me, oh, you're not good at this, I'll just say, no, you're wrong. Because as an adult, I have that kind of confidence. But children listen to that. And I took it all in as a child. And that became a part of me. That became my intuition, that you know, when I had trouble doing a math problem, I thought, oh, maybe I'm not smart enough. I didn't think, oh, this problem is hard, I need to work harder at it. So part of how I retrained myself is, first of all, I looked at it in a very kind of engineering or scientific mindset, right? I analyzed the data and I said, well, is this a rational belief or is it an irrational belief? Is it supported by evidence, or is it just sort of this, some sort of intuition that I believe, you know, that we are taught, women's intuition, we're supposed to listen to it. No. Intuition is powerful, but it can be wrong. So I still rely on my intuition, but now I have retrained my intuition to not tell me all this negative self-talk. My intuition now tells me things that I should do, things that are fun, things that I can use to be a better person and a stronger person. And it's really changed my life in so many ways. So the process that I talk about in more detail in the book, although the book isn't a how-to story, it's really an adventure story. So, but yeah, part of it is I was terrified of flying. I mean, I was terrified of a lot of things, but flying especially, because, you know, you hear about all these planes crashing and how risky it is. And so I trained myself to, first of all, to examine the data, say, is this really a risky thing? Because if flying is totally risky, then maybe I shouldn't do it. But I looked at it, and there are facts that are published that, you know, 1/3 of the fatalities in general aviation, which is small plane flying, is due to alcohol. You know, I mean, that seems kind of strange. So I just said, well, okay, you know, I mean, if I enjoy taking a drink, that's fine, but I just will never, ever violate the law that says 8 hours between any drink and flying a plane. I just told myself right at the beginning, that's how I'm going to be. And now instantly, the odds are in my favor. You know, the odds have gotten better. And there's many little things that I found I was able to do, so that my odds of being in an accident ended up being much, much less than what they would be for the general public. So that way, and I told myself this, and then I got in the airplane. Well, I'm kind of going on and on, but essentially this was all part of the training that I did. And I also did one scary thing each day. And you don't have to take up flying if there's something you really want to do that you love doing, but you think you're not good enough, or you think that it's scary. I really encourage you to push yourself. Don't say, well, I'm not suited for that, or this is too hard. Do something that's really hard, that seems really scary, because it is worth it. Going beyond, the negative talk from the screwed up system is so valuable. It will make your life become larger and more wonderful, whatever it is. I mean, and maybe you're scared of talking in front of a group, or maybe you're scared of, I don't know. I mean, anything that you're scared of, whatever it is, do a little bit of it each day. And every day do something you're a little uncomfortable with. And it's amazing how far you can go if you do one small thing each day.
That's really great. And I also appreciated your discussion in the story about how you would do these little tricks to sort of force you to do that. Like you bought an airplane even though you really couldn't afford it because of the lessons costing so much. And so you did all this math to figure out like, oh, okay, well, if I buy a plane, I can't not fly, or otherwise it's a really terrible financial investment. So I really appreciated some of the stories that you talk about and how you kind of set up your environment to kind of force you to do those risky things.
That's forcing yourself to do the things you're uncomfortable with, or setting up rewards, or, I think that's another really good technique that I've heard a lot of people doing it. Like, it's like, I'm going to, say they want to write a book, and they say, well, if I don't write 50,000 words by this date, so they write up a check, a campaign donation to the candidate they hate the most, and they give it to the friend, and they say, if I don't finish my goal, you mail this to that person.
Did you do anything like that with the writing of the book? Did you have any little tricks like that to help with the writing?
The trick I used was, I had a friend, an accountability buddy. And so this friend of mine, she's wonderful. She loves my writing, and she is not critical at all, which, sometimes you need friends who are critical, or editors. You definitely need that. But in the beginning, sometimes when you're just trying to get yourself motivated to write, she was great, because I promised her I would send her a certain number of words every week. And now I had to do that. And I also for me, I had a little carrot, because every time she got it, I told her, you don't have to read it. You don't have to do anything. I just need to do this for you. And but she would read it every time. She would always say she loved it, which was that was really great to hear. So
really
that you can set up that kind of encouragement as well too. It doesn't have to be the stick. It can be something sweet that makes you happy as well when you do something. But a lot of, like the story Julie was talking about with the finances, is I really struggle. I mean, flying is a very expensive sport, and I did not. I mean, I was middle class. I was not poor, but I really couldn't afford all the flying I was doing. So I kept figuring out ways to, to stretch my dollars and to get more of a chance to fly. And I also set it up so that if I flew less, that I would end up spending more. And so that really motivated me to make sure that plane didn't just sit in the hangar, or actually on the tie down. Chewing up tie down fees and insurance fees.
Great. Later on in the book, you kind of described some of, after you sort of entered the sport of aerobatic flying, you told some stories about how you're able to overcome moments where you've been treated unfairly. Would you mind sharing one of those stories about a time you were sort of treated unfairly, and some tricks that you've overcome? Since I think that many people who are sort of not the right, or not the type of person you typically see in a sport are sort of seen as less competitive or less willing to do it. And I think that applies to a lot of things. I'd love to hear a story a little bit about how you're able to kind of recognize you're being treated unfairly and then still overcome that.
Thanks. That's a great question, Julie. So Yeah, I mean, so this goes to, I think, people, coming into engineering and feeling that it's maybe they're not in the right place. I know I had a professor once tell me, women don't have the intellectual capacity for computer science. And, so it seems to me that there are often two types of books in the world that are trying to address these issues. There are, books where they talk about systemic racism and systemic sexism and how it exists and how, external companies and universities all need to change. And that is all true. They all do need to change. But, I'm just one person. What can I do to make a difference in my life? And then on the other hand, there's sort of the narrative that, well, it's all your fault if you're poor or if you don't make it in computer sciences because you're not smart enough. And that's really wrong too. What I think is really important is that for anybody who is an underrepresented group, that you have to acknowledge that unfairness exists and you're not going to be able to solve it all. You should work to try to change it for everybody else, but it's a cultural and systemic thing. It's going to take a while. So in the meantime, the best thing that you can do is do the best you possibly can within the world you are, whether that's protesting, whether that's, fighting for other, people of your race or gender, whether it's just doing the best possible job in your classes and moving up in the world to get into a higher position in your job. All of these help. And the story I like to tell that really epitomized that to me was how I made the United States aerobatic team. So I should say that this story is kind of fun because it's, so you've heard of the children's book, The Little Engine That Could? Well, I had the little airplane that couldn't. My plane was less expensive than most of the other competitors' planes. As a middle-class person, I was competing against people who were quite wealthy. And as a result, there were a lot of things my plane could not do. So when I got there to the championships, to the United States championships that decided who was going to win a spot on the team and who wouldn't, I looked at the sequence of maneuvers I was supposed to fly, and I realized the laws of physics say that it is impossible for my little airplane to fly this sequence. There is no way I can do it. And so I went to my hotel room that night in despair. And I just thought, maybe this is the wrong sport for me. Maybe I should give it up because I put everything I had into getting this far, and it is not enough. And then I heard my dad's voice. And I remembered what he used to say to me when I was working, because he taught me math, and I would work on a proof. He gave me these proofs that were really hard. They were well above my level. And so I would try it and it would just be too hard. And I would throw the pencil down. I would say, I can't do this. It's impossible. There's no way I can get this math problem done. And he would say, don't give up. There's always a way. And I heard his voice in that Texas hotel room. And it occurred to me, what do I need to do? I need to get those judges to score me. So I need to get a high enough score on these maneuvers to make the team. And I realized, oh, that's a math problem. It's an engineering problem. It's actually a combinatorial optimization problem. And I said, I can do that. So what I did is I sat down and I figured out an algorithm that gave me a way to work around all the weaknesses of my airplane. So I could not get a perfect score, but there was a way that I could get the best possible score given that sequence and given my airplane. So the next morning, I went out to the contest and I flew according to my algorithm. And I didn't get a perfect score, but I got the best possible score my plane could get, and I made the team. So I want to encourage everybody that is in that situation. You may feel that you're in a situation where the odds are stacked against you, but there is always a way to maximize your score, to figure out a way to make the situation as good for you as it can possibly be. And then you go for it. And that's really what my book is all about, is about how I kept running into various obstacles. And that wasn't the last one, by the way. There were more after that. And a lot of them were not really that fair, although some of them obviously were my fault too. But yeah, so the advantage for me and why this is really helpful for getting an engineering degree is that when I went back to get my PhD at UC Berkeley, there were a lot of things that happened to me that weren't fair. So my department actually tried to cancel my preliminary exam the week before I was scheduled to give it. And you have to get 4 professors all scheduled up in, and as anybody who's tried to schedule an exam with 4 professors knows, it takes months just to do it. And so I was like, why is this department doing this to me? There is no way I can deal with it. But I figured out a way, figured out a way to deal with it. And every time you do that, you're making the way a little bit easier for people who come behind you. Like, I found out only after I had been promoted to full professor here at the University of Washington that I was the first Latina to be a full professor in the College of Engineering here in its 100-year history. But now I'm hoping there can be many more, and I think that's really why we're engineers. It's because we want to tackle hard problems and we want to make the world a better place. And this is something that I think engineering as a field, as well as the world, will be better if we have a more diverse group of engineers. If we have more women engineering professors, more, Black and Indigenous and people of color, in the highest ranks of academia and CEOs of engineering companies. That's what we need. There's a lot of research that has shown that improves the bottom line of companies. So, by just working on your engineering degree and doing a good job, you are making things better.
Thanks, Cecilia. No, I think that's really great to hear that, and I think that's definitely been true for myself as well as a woman computer scientist. There's definitely a lot of times when I felt like, okay, well, if we can open the door, hopefully we can help out the rest that come behind us as well too. So I love the orientation around a problem to solve there. Great. So, given that I know you as Professor Cecilia, not necessarily Pilot Cecilia, I was struck particularly in the book how you talked about the role of teaching and how that played such a role, especially in the beginning. You're first learning how to fly, and you sort of recognize both good and bad teaching. And so I'd love to hear from you a little bit around sort of your experiences with, and for those of you who didn't know, she was not only just a pilot, she was also an instructor as well. So she has her flight instructor's license as well too, and taught many students and flight clubs as well too. So so I wanted to hear a little bit more about like how your flying career also has informed you as Professor Cecilia.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I mean, so teaching is something I have always loved to do. I mean, I could talk for an hour on this, on what it takes to be a good teacher, how much a good teacher can make a difference in the cockpit and in the classroom. I do talk about some of my favorite teachers in the book. I think one of the key things that some of the best flight instructors that I had was really contextualizing my experience. So because I'm short, when I first sat in the cockpit, US airplanes are made for a standard 5'10" individual who weighs 180 pounds. Well, the average woman in the United States is 5'4" and weighs, I think, about 120 or 130 pounds. So, you know, there was this real issue here about, you know, being in a situation where I just did not fit. I didn't fit the world of aviation. And so my first instructor didn't even tell me about this. And so I was sitting too low in the cockpit. And so I couldn't see out far enough, and that impacted my landings. When I flew with this really excellent instructor, Louis Robinson, he spent about half an hour getting me seated in the cockpit. And he had all these special styrofoam cushions that he used, and that he had me sit on them, and then he looked outside and he measured it. And so all of this was, you know, before we even flew, and I was a little impatient. I said, when are we going to go flying? And he said, you know, if the environment is not set up right for you, you could think it's your fault when you don't fly well, but it's really the cockpit. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that saying for anybody who doesn't fit in, you know, in a role such as engineering, because, oh, we assume that doctors or engineers are all male, you know, or we don't assume that people of color can do this job. So, yeah, I mean, for me, it's always the assumption that because I'm Latina, it means that, you know, my parents must have worked in the fields. And, you know, the one person who said, well, I'm in, you know, it's not that I don't want to be your boyfriend. It's that my mother says she always sees the name Rodriguez in the police blotters. You know, so, and that was my name, my maiden name as a child, Cecilia Rodriguez. So yeah, I'm getting off track from your question, Julie. I'm sorry. So
That's okay.
The point is, because teaching is so important, and because expectations of the teacher are so very important. There's a couple stories in the book. I wonder, should I tell the story about when I was in that German school where I didn't speak German?
Sure. Yeah. No, I thought that was a great story.
So this is, I think, a great example of the importance of teacher expectations. So I spent a year in Germany when I was a sophomore in high school, and I went there not speaking German. And while I was there, I had two teachers that illustrated the differences of teacher expectations. So I had a French teacher who was teaching fourth year French to all these 10th grade German students. So it was French being taught through German. All right, kind of impossible, right? Since I didn't, and I knew nothing in French, zero. I knew a little bit of German because I'd studied some before I went to Germany. So I thought, I had a teacher, my German teacher, who was teaching German literature. And he told me, well, you will obviously not understand anything we're discussing. It's very sophisticated and you don't speak German. So why don't you just sit in the back, you know, try to read the stories, but you know, there's nothing you can do. All right. He knew I was going to fail before I even started the class. So I got into this class with this French teacher, and I assumed she was going to say the same thing, because learning fourth year French through German was much harder than German literature. No, she said, I want you to do this. And she made me take all the tests, and then she graded them. They were full of red marks. Can you imagine? The first test was a dictation in French. I didn't know any French. And she found me, you know, a student who volunteered to be my tutor. And she kept encouraging me. Every time I would get a little better on every test, and she would say, great, this is a great job. And I still remember this day. This is actually my favorite grade that I've ever received in my lifetime. It was January, so it was about in the beginning of the second semester. We had a test in French, and for the first time, I passed it. I got the equivalent of a D minus. And she came back, she was bouncing as she came back to my desk with a test, and she put it down on my desk and she said, "Congratulations, I knew you could do it." And by the time the end of the year rolled around, I was one of the 3 top students in that class. And everybody else was a German student who had been studying French for 4 years. In the German literature class, I failed. So here you have, so this is something to think about, you know, if for English as a foreign language students too, the teachers need to expect a lot, but also provide a lot of support. I mean, she found me that extra tutor, she gave me extra help, she encouraged me with every homework assignment and every test. And so it's that combination of high expectations and really strong, both emotional and, you know, actual knowledge-based support. That's what enabled me to succeed. I mean, so this, I think, is a perfect example of an A/B test, right? You know, I was the same person in both of those classes, but I failed one and I did really well in another. And I think we can do that too with people who come into this country and need to learn English. Don't assume, oh, they'll never learn English. Say, I know you can do it, and then give them extra help. And this is my philosophy of teaching that I do today as well. Getting a PhD in engineering, getting a master's in engineering, getting any degree in engineering is not easy. And it's often emotionally difficult as well as intellectually difficult. And I really believe, so I tell all my students, my classes are hard. They're very challenging. I expect you to do well in them. I expect you to put in a lot of effort, but I also expect that you will do it. And I'm here for help.
That's great. Yeah, that combination of high expectations and high support is so key. So if there's any professors listening, I think I saw some in the audience. That's a good takeaway for you as well too. Well, how about for the students? So you lucked out. You didn't necessarily get to choose your French or your German teacher. So what do you do if you sort of recognize that you're not necessarily getting the support that you need? And you're thinking back to your conversation around, sometimes there's unfairness, and so you can kind of enable yourself to overcome that unfairness. So what can students do if they're sort of not getting the teaching support they need or not that mentorship? I was struck by a lot of your discussions of how, just that, your initial friend Carlos, who took you out and sort of showed you the ropes in the beginning, all the way through, some of your different instructors and mentors. So can you talk about the kind of role of mentorship and what students can do to kind of seek that out?
All right, so mentoring is so very important for everybody. As a matter of fact, I study this in my research looking at large online communities. We've discovered this phenomenon we call distributed mentoring, which is actually lots of little pieces of mentoring all being added together to create a larger whole. And I really believe that is what helps for people today. It's really hard to say, I want this one person to be my mentor. Because yeah, you may not luck out. I mean, it's really fortunate if you find one person who can be your mentor. But the fact is, you can find mentoring from all around you. I mean, it's distributed in the world around you. Your friends are great mentors. They might not be able to solve all of your problems, but they can give you a little bit of advice, and you can give them some advice. And you get different bits of advice from different friends, from different professors, from different teachers, from books. You can read books and they can give you a little bit of mentoring. For me, it was going to my library when I was a little kid. I mean, I really think that's kind of what formed my ethical compass, was reading a lot of young adult fiction as a child, where, good triumphs over evil. Because I had a teacher in high school. I grew up in Indiana, just so you know. And my teacher in high school actually said, it's okay, it's okay to do anything you want as long as nobody finds out. So it's okay to lie, but as long as nobody finds out. I mean, what sort of a thing is that for a teacher to tell you? I mean, that is really, I mean, and it saddens me that there are people probably still saying that. So you need to choose, you know, that's, I said that person is my teacher, but I'm not going to listen to what they say. I'm going to find mentoring from other people. And I think everybody can do that. You can reach out to other people. You can read books that inspire you. You can, you know, mentoring doesn't have to come from somebody, you know, above you in the hierarchy. You don't have to go to somebody at a conference. Don't go to a senior person at a conference and say, will you be my mentor? That's not going to work. You know, because they may not be the right person for you. You know, I mean, you need to put yourselves in situations. And actually, one thing that I found, one of the best ways I found the best mentors is by mentoring other people. Because when you mentor other people, not only do you learn from them, but you're in a community of mentors. And those mentors will mentor you as well as the students you're mentoring. So volunteer. I was told when I was a junior member of my field, oh, don't waste your time on, you know, helping other people. No, I ignored that because for me, it really mattered to help girls and Latinas in STEM and just anybody who was struggling. That was, I had a lot of passion toward doing that because of how I suffered as a kid. So I did it anyway. And guess what? It ended up benefiting me probably more than it benefited any of them.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear you there. I get so much more out of mentorship than I probably give to the students, and it's great for self-reflection and learning about yourself, in addition to helping others. So it's just an all-around great experience. And I really love you know, just to bring the HCDE, you know, like, you know, we've been launching a lot of mentorship programs. We have the Microsoft mentoring program. We're launching the mentoring program just to recognize that, and kind of brings us back to that point in the beginning where you talked about your friend who just, you know, she wasn't necessarily giving you constructive criticism on your writing. She was just there for that accountability and like the, yes, I love it, keep going, and that motivation. And so, you know, finding this distributed network of mentors is a really
That's
great
right.
takeaway.
Emotional support is a part of mentoring. We actually found that people getting emotional support in online communities, young adolescents actually improved their writing if they got emotional support. So
great. All right, so I'm going to move on to some of the questions that people submitted before as they registered, and then as I see there's a couple great comments for you as well too that we can let you read in the Q&A, since there's no chat. People are leaving nice comments for you. But I wanted to kind of address some of these questions as some of the people had when they registered. So one of the things, so you've had this sort of, you know, to put it in plain terms, you had to sort of, you know, loop-de-loo in sort of your path and career. I mean, you've been you know, a software developer, you've worked at, you know, the national lab, and then you became a professor. So you've taken a lot of these different paths, and it wasn't necessarily a straightforward path to get there. So how do you know if the path you're on is the right one, or if you need to make a change?
I think if you feel that your path is stretching you, that it's a little bit challenging, you should stay on it. All right. I mean, if it's too comfortable, too easy, time to make a change. Do something different. That's my feeling, because the easy path, you know, is not really, it's gonna make things harder for you later on. So do something that's challenging, something that scares you, and you'll be rewarded with excitement and a better life. So yeah, I mean, that said, if you're being abused, like if you have an abusive boss, maybe what you need to do is change jobs. I mean, don't stay in a situation that's causing you active pain, but move to some, it doesn't mean that field is, like if you had a bad teacher in math, that doesn't mean that math, you're not good at math. It just means you need to find a better teacher.
Great. The next question was, someone has asked sort of what piece of advice has helped you in your career, and something that you want specifically women entering engineering or flying maybe to know what's a piece of advice that's really helped you.
So when I was a graduate student at Berkeley, thinking I was no good and I would never make it, Mildred Dresselhaus, who's a famous physicist, award-winning physicist from MIT, came to speak to us. And what she said, looking at this group of, I was in a women's group at Berkeley, and she looked at all of us and she said, "You are all wonderful." I don't think women in higher education, women in STEM fields hear that often enough. And so I'm telling it to you now, you are wonderful and you can do this. And I've never forgotten that. That was just one person giving one talk, and it made a lifelong difference to me.
I like that. I agree. You are wonderful. Great. Next question is, what advice would you give to other Latinas that are hesitant to pursue a STEM career and a STEM degree in a career?
Okay, well, first of all, so probably Latinas may be familiar with this phenomenon. I used to call it the look. So when I first went into a classroom, usually in elementary school, they would put me in slow reading groups. And then whenever I got the first test was handed back, the teacher would give me this look of shock. And I was, this incredible surprise. Because sorry, I don't mean to brag, but I usually got the best score in the class in elementary school. Maybe a lot of you here who are in this program know that feeling. Yeah, so again, that there was that expectation the teacher had of me, and that I proved it wrong with the test. So another thing that I realized that I really wanted to do was I wanted to go to a very good STEM program, and I wanted to get a degree from that program. So that's why I went. So I went to Caltech as an undergrad and got a math degree. And then I went to Berkeley and got a PhD in computer science. And it was hard. Both of those were incredibly hard. I dropped out of both programs for a while, actually, because they were just too difficult. But what that gave me was something that's better than money in the bank. Having a degree, having that doctor behind your name, saying I got a PhD from a really great school like the University of Washington. I have a degree in engineering, in computer science, in that is the counteraction to this, this assumption that you're not very good. So instead of people assuming, so they meet me and I say right away, if it's an academic, I learned this. Believe it or not, there were people that I interviewed when I was interviewing for my job as a professor, who said, oh, well, I wasn't technical enough, even though I actually had more technical papers than they did. And it's because I'm a small Latina, and they assume certain things. And it's unconscious. It's not that people are bad or say I'm going to be a racist. It's unconscious. And women do this, Latinas do this too. If you have a degree in a science field, in a STEM field, that immediately shakes people up. They're going to, they're going to give you that look when they first meet you. And they are going to think something differently of you. They're going to have better expectations. They're probably going to give you more jobs. They're going to give you higher salaries. So yes, and also it's going to be better for everybody else in the world, because we need more Latinos. We need more Latinx in engineering. We are underrepresented, especially US born Latinx are tremendously underrepresented. And I think that's because we grew up in the US where there were all these kind of low expectations put upon us. My dad, speaks with a thick accent and was an immigrant to the US. But whenever he experienced discrimination, but it just rolled right off his back. He said, oh, that person's stupid. They're wrong. He never had any doubt about his own intellectual abilities. And that's the advantage of growing up in a country where everybody supports you. You know, until we can change the US so that, you know, Black kids are treated the same way that white kids are, until Latinx people are not assumed to have trouble with English, until we can change the US to do that, we need to fight, and we need to increase the number of people in non-traditional occupations. Every woman out there that has a choice between staying home and working, take the most challenging job you can. I used to feel guilty about it with my kids, by the way. I said, oh, maybe I should have stayed at home because I haven't been as good a mother as I am. And my daughter, who's now 25, looked at me and said, no, you were a wonderful mother. She actually said this. She said, because you were a role model to me. She actually told, this is my, and this was when she was a teenager and she was very critical. I have to say, my daughter is not one to brown nose me. So she said that I helped her. And I think that's true for everybody that's in a non-traditional role. You help more people than you know. You know, and my son, okay, my son too, he's encouraging his girlfriend to, you know, to keep going. She wants to be a doctor. He's encouraging her to struggle with the hard classes and to do well. And he's supporting her that way. And so that's what we can all do as parents and engineers.
Yeah, I can definitely resonate with those feelings of that, because you know society tells us that you know I'm a mother to two young kids as well too, and you know society like defaults to the fact that they assume that I'm not working, and that's a little challenge. But I also had a you know mother who worked two jobs growing up, and to me she was always just mom, and she was awesome, and I was proud of her. So that's really great to hear. And I met your daughter too, and it's great to imagine her saying those words to you. The next question is I'm going to combine two questions. So you've kind of had to overcome a lot of adversity, and you know, as an academic, you've dealt with rejection. You know, thinking about like being potentially turned down for jobs or passed over. So what kind of kept you motivated through all these hardships over all these times? Was there something, you know, you mentioned your dad's voice when we talked about that, when you faced a hardship? Was there something in particular that kind of just kept you going? Was it this, you know, feeling of liking to overcome challenge, liking problem solving? Can you kind of reflect on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about this a lot, what made me keep going when it seemed really challenging. And I've realized that it was really that one voice of encouragement that my father gave to me. So both my parents were really supportive. I shouldn't put my mother down here too, because she was also very supportive. But my father especially believed in me, you know, when the guidance counselor in my high school didn't think I would go to college. I didn't even find out about the PSAT until a week before the exam. And my father actually found out about it from a friend because, you know, so I'm first generation, right? Not first generation going to college, but first generation growing up in the US. So I had no idea what it was like to apply to college. And my parents didn't either. But my dad found out somehow, I think from a colleague, about these standardized tests. And so a week beforehand, he marched into the guidance counselor's office and made her sign me up late for the exam. And the guidance counselor was sort of like, you know, I mean, she didn't say this, but I could tell she was probably thinking, oh, why? It's sort of a waste of time for you to do it because you're not going to do well. And I took it, no prep, no courses. My high school didn't even have AP courses. And yeah, I ended up doing well enough to get a national merit scholarship. And it turned out, yeah, so I did really well. And the only person who thought I was going to do well wasn't my classmates, it wasn't my teachers, it was my dad. But that one voice was enough. He said, I'm not surprised. I'm proud of you. He used to say my buttons are popping whenever he was proud of me. Whenever I brought home a test that I did well on, he would say my buttons are popping. I knew you could do it. And I was really lucky. That's a real privilege to have a father who tells you, I know you are brilliant. I mean, I said, no, I'm brilliant. No. But that gave me a lot of strength. And so now today, I mean, this is why I really try to be that voice. This is why I wanted to be a teacher and why I try to be that voice of support for my students, because some people don't have a parent to tell them, you are wonderful, you are brilliant. And that really matters. And I think my job as a teacher, not only, I mean, people can read books, they can go to MOOCs, they can, get this knowledge in many ways. But I think part of my job as a teacher is making sure that I break the complex subjects down into simpler building blocks. And then I set up assignments so they can learn by doing, and that I'm the voice of support, that I encourage them to be their best selves and be the wonderful students that I know they are. So that's find that
find
one
your
voice.
Cecilia. Find your Cecilia. Find your friend who's going to be that voice to help carry you through. Great. So there's a couple questions that have come from the Q&A here that I wanted to kind of get to real quick, and then if there's time, there's also one of the things we collected from you all was sort of hearing about some of your fears. So I'll try and get that in a second. But Arsenio asks, when I was learning how to fly, I nearly quit after I was introduced to stalls. And I remember reading that part in your book too. I overcame that fear and got my license. Was there a maneuver that you had to learn that scared you, and how did you overcome that fear?
Okay, I love that question because stalls almost drove me out of getting my flight license. Okay, do I have time to tell a quick story?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so a stall in aviation is not when the engine quits, it's when the wing stops flying. And it's a maneuver that all student pilots need to learn how to do, because you need to learn how to recover if the airplane should stop flying. So, but of course it's terrifying because the plane is kind of out of control for a little bit. So I've been flying, and part of what you have to do as a pilot is fly solo. And so I'd done stalls with my instructor there because, oh yeah, he or she could save me. But now I had to go solo. So my instructor told me, I want you to go up and do stalls on your solo flight, and don't fly with me again until you can tell me you've flown stalls solo. So I thought, oh, maybe I should just quit. But instead I went up, and first I flew a lot of steep turns, clearing the area and being safe, because I'm going to be safe before I do this really scary maneuver. And then finally I said, okay, I promised my instructor I would do it. I'm going to run out of fuel if I don't do this. So I did a very gentle little stall, lowered the nose, recover. Okay, I did it, and I was shaking, I was trembling. I said, oh, that's it, I can go back now. And then I said, oh no, my instructor said stalls, plural. I have to do one more because 2 stalls counts. So I did one more stall, then I went in and landed, and then I went and I told my instructor with a straight face, I did stalls today. So yeah, that was I did the minimum, but it was better than nothing. Because if I'd done nothing, I would never have gotten my license. But by doing those 2 stalls that day, the next day, it wasn't so scary. So yeah, you are right to be scared of stalls.
The stalls, okay, yeah, same. Great. One other question. So Jeanette asks, so she says, you've not shied away from huge challenges, used intelligence, humor, determination, and insight to overcome and then excel. You continue to be an inspiration, loved Flying Free, a compelling memoir. And so her question is, would you consider writing a follow-up memoir to Flying Free?
Actually, I've already started writing. So people have asked, so there's 2 memoirs that I have started writing. One is my childhood story. which I decided to make into an autobiographical novel because it's about this friendship I formed with this really shy dog that wouldn't let anybody come within 30 feet of her. And I loved her so much. And in real life, she died. So I can't tell that story in the memoir. So I wrote the whole story just like it happened, except I changed the ending and made the dog live. So I have that so that one is pretty much written. The other one is my life in college and becoming an engineer and how I got through the PhD program and what happened there. And then what happened when I came back. And I've started writing little essays about that. So yeah, so there's 2 more that I might write. Depends on how this book does. have to get this one, you know, successfully launched, although it's been doing better than I expected. I'm really surprised at how many people are enjoying the book, not just for inspiration, but they're also saying that it's an exciting story. And I'm really happy because I want the book to be inspirational to other people, because if there's one person because this is the book I wanted to read when I was 12. And if there's one 12-year-old out there who reads it, or a grown woman or a grown man who reads it and says, I will do something difficult, then I'll really feel the book was worth writing. So yeah.
Excellent. Well,
did that answer the question?
I think so, yes. So the answer, Jeanette, to your question, yes, not only is she considering it, but she's already in the progress of that.
Yeah.
So, well, we are out of time.
Saying all those kind words.
Yeah, there's some other great words. People are thanking you for this, and that you're an incredible person. They're really looking forward to hearing that. So, I wanted to close. We are running out of time, and there are some more questions, unfortunately, we didn't get to, but I definitely encourage you to reach out to Cecilia. She's a wonderful teacher. Yeah. My memoir that I want to see you write is about your teaching and thinking about teaching and what, because you've had such a wide range of teaching. So maybe that's one that you should think
I have a lot more. I mean, I love writing, so I'm certainly going to keep doing it. I do want to say, if anybody's interested in sort of behind the scenes stories where I put little snippets of future memoirs, I have a newsletter that you can subscribe to. You can always unsubscribe. I promise not to spam. But it
actually,
comes out
Stacia,
no
can
more
you
often.
share? Yeah.
What you want me to?
I think Stacia has the thing that has the information on.
Yeah, if you send out the link tree, I don't even know if I can share.
I think
yeah, there's a link tree, linktree.ee/Cecilia Aragon. And if you go there, there's a bunch of links. And one of them is sign up for my author newsletter. And there it is. The EE Pearl one is the direct newsletter sign up. And and I'm just going to close with one thing that my publisher tells me I'm supposed to say is, about the book. If you can, it's great if you can buy a copy, but if you can't afford it, or if you don't want to spend that money, asking a library to order the book and then getting it from the library for free, that is just as good. And the publisher thinks that's wonderful. Same thing, writing reviews on Amazon or Goodreads. Every review matters because people don't review very often. Usually only 1 in 100 people review. So, leave an honest review, and that's good for pretty much any author that you run across. Thank you all for coming. I really enjoyed this. Hope to see some of you on my newsletter. And thank you so much, Julie.
Yep.
And I want to thank Stacia and Leah and Melissa and Sherry for all the behind the scenes work that they did to make this possible. HCDE is a wonderful department with fantastic people. I'm so lucky to be here with all of you.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thanks, Cecilia. Bye.
Bye.